There is something so magical about walking out onto a balcony your first day on vacation in a warm Mediterranean island. And I have to explain it to you. If you've never opened the balcony doors and walked out 6:30 in the morning, maybe even 7, and this rush of warm air hits your face, hits your body, the smell of sea air, it is an unmatched feeling that when you're back in it, you literally never want to escape from it. And you can hear birds, but they don't sound like the birds that you've got at home. Crickets and June, I think they're called June bugs, but in Greek they're called ziziros. And they make this zzz sound all summer long. And I know that we do have some here in Canada. Most countries, when it gets really hot, you can hear it. But when you're in the southern Mediterranean, you can hear them all day and all night. But instead of annoying you, it's this draw like I've just come back to this place where everything just sounds amazing. There's a smell in the air, and it depends on what's nearby, whether it's an orange grove or it is the smell of carob trees, the smell of sea air. It's so magical. So that's exactly how I was feeling 2 weeks ago when I landed in Cyprus, the country that I used to live in for 16 years. And although we did go back last year, I found myself to be overly stressed out of my mind when I was there last year. And I don't think that I took the time to appreciate these feelings, these sensory feelings that are really what remind us that we're in a different place than home. So, what was different this time? And what we're going to talk about today is exactly this. Why didn't I notice these things last time? Why is it that all of this came rushing back to me this time? And have you ever thought that you just become numb sometimes and don't even realize what's going on? You're in this state of routine and you just go and you just do. And a lot of the time, when you get to the point where you're not even noticing what's happening around you, you know it's there. You can hear the noise, the weather, whatever it is, but you're not actually present in your life. Life is happening to you, not for you. And when you get to that point, that's when you realize a change is needed and is necessary. So, this may not sound like it's an episode that is going to be very interesting, but I promise you, it actually will. And what I'd like to do is just take you through some observations that I've noticed when the body calms down and you're in a different place. I think you're going to agree with me when you hear about some of these ideas that I've had. And let me just ask you a question right off the bat. Right off the bat. And if it's not a question that resonates with you, then you know what? Turn this off, go watch something else, or go listen to another podcast. But have you ever had the idea that this life that you're living in right now, it's just not working for you anymore? Like, you think about, what if I were living somewhere else? What if I could change up my environment and live somewhere warmer, where the pace is slower? Have you ever thought about that? Have you ever thought about maybe the struggles that you're going through, the stress that you feel right now or every day? What if that all went away just by changing your environment? That's what we're going to talk about today. And I think you're going to find a lot of interesting statistics and data that I'm going to share with you, that it's not just you and me that have thought about this. It's actually 60% of the globe. Yeah, 60% of people have had the same idea. And I'm going to give you some options today. I'm going to give you a little seeds of things to think about. And if you're midlife, maybe you're in your late 30s, maybe you're in your 40s, your 50s, your 60s, your 70s, wherever you are midlife right now, have you thought about making a change? So, this is what I want to talk to you about today. And it's not just mindset, but I'm also going to give you some strategic ideas in how to actually move forward toward that goal. So let's get started. Welcome back, everyone. I am Katharine Loucaidou, your mindset medicine host. I feel renewed. I've got energy. I feel relaxed. My nervous system has calmed down, which it really needed to. I find that when your nervous system gets too stressed, you start breaking out. Maybe it's hives, maybe it's irritability, short temper, annoyed at the simple things. If you've ever felt any of those and you didn't really have an explanation why, likely your nervous system is in overdrive. And somehow, some way, you need to get it to calm down. So let me share some numbers with you. According to Internations 2024 Global Expat Report, 60% of people who have relocated said that they do it for the quality of life. They're not doing it for work. They're not doing it for family per se, not necessarily for finances or tax incentives, but for an improved quality of life. If you were to look at your quality of life right now, would you say that it's incredible? Would you say that you love the way that you're living? And if you are, that is amazing. And give yourself a pat on the back because you have created the mindset and the environment around you that you absolutely love where you live. If, on the other hand, you feel like you're ready for a change, something needs to change in your life. That's the feeling that you've got right now. You don't know what it is exactly. You can't quite put your finger on it, but you know something's got to change in order for other things to change in life. So this 60% number of people who have relocated for quality of life is in fact a historical shift that hasn't happened before. For decades, people have moved because they had to. They were being reassigned work in a different country, needing to relocate. Perhaps they had to relocate because of family or maybe aging parents, or they had to relocate because maybe there were medical issues and they needed to relocate to provide their body a healthier way of living. So here's what's interesting. The places that I love the most are the Mediterranean Sunbelt, which would include Cyprus, Greece, Portugal, Spain, and southern Italy. So these are the Mediterranean nations that happen to be topping all of the lists. And if you look at migration data right now and statistics, that is really where we have people from all over the world migrating to. The reason that people are migrating to the Mediterranean, and then I'm going to go back to what I experienced while I was in Cyprus, which is an island in the Mediterranean. Here's the feeling that you've got, and I would agree with all of these points that I'm about to share with you because I felt them as well. So you have the feeling that time is stretched. It's like all of a sudden there is more time in your day to relax. It's not this race against time. I couldn't believe that, I would get to the Mediterranean Sea around 9 a.m. Uh, Sometimes we would get a chair at that time, sometimes we wouldn't, because other people were up even earlier and down there by the sea. But from 9 a.m. until 1 p.m., I would just be swimming in the sea. I wonder how often you can do an activity for 4 hours and not get tired of it. How often have you done an activity where time just stood still? It was just relaxing. The feeling of the air that smells like the earth, the sea, sand, salt. You don't feel like the stuffiness of pollution and cars and buildings and people. It's this fresh freedom. I think actually, now that I think about it, that's the smell of freedom for me. The smell of the salt coming off of the sea and just the sound of water, that's freedom. The feeling of humanity, of actually feeling like I can hear myself again, not being rushed, not being watched by people, not adhering to deadlines. Now, yes, I understand that I'm on a vacation, but I also observed other people living there. I mean, I lived there for 16 years. So what I observed is the easiness. They don't have the rush, the hustle and stress like we do in North America and in many places in Europe. They don't have it. Time is just it, when they get to it, they get to it. And yes, that is an adjustment that many people who migrate to the Mediterranean Sunbelt have to get used to. I know I had to get used to it when I moved there. So here's what we have noticed. Post-pandemic, there has been a surge of people asking themselves, is the life that I've built until now the one that I want to continue living for the next 20, 30 years? Is this really how I want to be living? Or is there a better way? Interestingly enough, it's no longer digital nomads, right? So a digital nomad is someone who is working online on their computer. They may be they're working online for a global company. They may be working in Italy, Spain, Greece, Portugal, but they are affiliated with a North American company. So that's a digital nomad. They are able to work online anywhere in the world where there's an internet connection. So what's interesting is the people who are migrating to this Mediterranean sunbelt are no longer just digital nomads. They are women, 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s moving there. They are families who want their children to grow up in a different environment. They want their children to be in a warmer environment where they can just play outside. They feel safe. There's a sense of community and family that's very strong. And we're noticing that it's midlife professionals, consultants, creatives, and even executives who need a change of pace. And I use the word need on purpose because if you have been working in a high stress environment, how long can you do that before your body and your brain burn out. I know I have experienced it so many times over the years. And burnout is real, autoimmune conditions. What I'm going to be studying, and it really fascinates me, is people who have had these conditions. So you've got burnout and extreme stress, autoimmune conditions. When they move to these Mediterranean southern climates, does anything change? Does anything improve in their health? I have read many articles, and of course, I lived there. But because I've now been in Canada for 18 years, going back, I have noticed that people don't seem to age as quickly as we do in North America. And stress ages us. Our environment and the noise. And when I say noise, I don't just mean like the audio environment. I mean the noise of economics and politics. And yes, they have all of that in Europe. I just find that it is very noisy here in North America. My opinions. Maybe you agree, maybe you disagree. So, this isn't more about more sunshine. It's about longevity, adding years back into your life. And we know that there is something called the Mediterranean diet, and it does, in fact, elongate the years of your life as long as you incorporate the fitness and the walking and the swimming. But sunshine, vitamin D, we also know how crucially important it is for us. So, here are some of the interesting observations that I made while I was away. I lived there from the age of 22 to my mid to late 30s. And when I was there, it was a race against time to establish a career. It was ambition. It was building a family. It was paying bills. It was, I was young and I was in build mode. I never really appreciated where I lived. So many people, when I moved back to Canada, said, why would you leave a Mediterranean island, which has turquoise, emerald waters, beautiful beaches? Why would you leave that and move to Canada? I'm going to be very honest with you and tell you, I didn't even realize I was living on such a beautiful island until I left. Because I was so ingrained in working and hustling. I had 3 jobs. I had 2 young kids. Both my husband and I had multiple jobs to be able to afford to live there because we didn't have a government job or a bank job, which are very secure and high paying in many European countries. I never had time to take my kids to the beach. I never had time to really just sit back and appreciate this environment that I was living in. So when I go back now, 2 decades later, I'm now at a different place in my life. I'm in my 50s. So I was able to build there, continue building work and experience here, creating equity in my home, creating investments and so on. My children, raising my kids because they had more opportunity here. That's why we moved back here. Healthcare when I needed it was better here. So 2 decades later, 3 businesses later, 1 authored book later, a global pandemic, humbling medical crises. Now, when I go back, now I appreciate what the Mediterranean environment does for a body. But the body needs to be self-aware to what a beautiful Mediterranean country will do for it. I realized when I got there this time that I didn't have to be on anymore. I didn't have to be productive. I didn't have to hustle. I could just relax. And then guess what happened? My mind came back. The clarity came back. The ideas came back. What can I do next? And then how do I reach this level of peace and less stress back home? And do I now have a new goal, which is to relocate back to the Mediterranean? So all of these ideas were coming through my mind. And here's the thing is that once you feel this contrast between where you are and where you could be, that's when you start to realize, okay, maybe I need to start making a plan. Maybe this is possible. What if the burnout that you're blaming on your business, on your busy life, is actually your body just saying, maybe you're just not in the right environment? What if the anxiety that you're feeling and you think you need to heal by whether it's meditation or taking medicine or other things, maybe it's the environment that you're in? What if you could just transfer what you're doing right now to a different environment? What would change? How would you change? How would the way you think change? What if the fogginess you're feeling, what if it went away when you changed environments, changed where you lived? You might be thinking, Katharine, not everyone can just move to the Mediterranean. So something that you may have learned about me by now or not is I don't agree with that. I think that anyone can do anything if they really want it bad enough. Because a move to the Mediterranean takes planning. It takes money, but not much more money than you living where you are on an everyday basis. And let me explain what I mean. Being able to work remotely, that's a plan that you would have to get on board with. Getting your family on board is something that you would have to do. Knowing where you want to move to in the Mediterranean and the advantages of it is something that you would have to take into account. Schooling, language, all of these things have to be taken into account, but nothing is impossible. If I can move to the Mediterranean at the age of 22 without knowing the language and staying there for 16 years, having a business there, becoming a professor at university there, then really anyone can do anything. And there was no internet when I did it all. I had to figure it out all along the way, which I did. And then relocate back to Canada without the internet, because it was just the inception of the internet when I did that. Again, became a professor here, became a real estate broker, opened businesses, became a coach, spoke on stages, authored a book. Again, that was me relocating back to a country after being gone for 16 years. Everything is possible. You just need the plan. And what I'm so happy about is because I've already done this twice in my life. I already know that when and if I decide to do it again, I already know by the back of my hand what that process looks like. So let's look a bit at some data. Let's see what's going on in the world right now. So, Google search trends for moving to Portugal, moving to Greece, and Mediterranean lifestyle have doubled since 2021. Does that shock you? Probably not. Has the thought crossed your mind that wouldn't it be fun and interesting to live somewhere else? 70% of knowledge workers surveyed by Deloitte and Touche in 2023 say they would consider relocating for lifestyle and well being, not salary. So, once again, we're noticing that as fixated as we are on financial gains living in North America, if we were to move, we're moving for quality of life, living longer, joy in our souls when we wake up in the morning smiling like, I cannot believe I live in the sunshine, and for our well being. The WHO reports lower rates of stress related illnesses, heart disease, and depression across Mediterranean blue zones. So, what I find interesting about these reports, because I lived in those countries, there actually is a lot of heart disease, but the reason for that is because of the way they have chosen to eat, the pastries and a lot of deep frying and so on. But you don't have to eat that way. You can eat the Mediterranean diet like they do in the blue zones, Sardinia and in Icaria. There are so many places where you can just go right into the village life and eat what is grown, eat meat antibiotic free that they're free range, grass fed. All of that exists. Homemade wines, homemade breads. It's a different type of flour that they're using in Europe. It doesn't have a lot of the preservatives that we do in North America. So many things contribute to the longevity of life when you decide to make a move to a place where they truly believe in quality of life. So don't get me wrong. I don't believe in running away from things. I'm very direct. I am very strategic, which is why I consult businesses and business owners. I always think ahead. But I also know how important quality of life is. You're looking at someone who probably shouldn't be sitting here after the multiple heart attacks and the open heart surgery, triple bypass, stroke. I've had paralysis, skin cancer. I've had so many things happen. But at the back of my mind, I still know how important our well being and quality of life is. And I have a goal. I actually told someone last week, I have a goal to live to 150. But I don't necessarily think that I can do that in the environment or the country that I'm in right now. I think in order to make that happen, I have to be somewhere that infuses my soul with joy and the warmth and the sunshine and the salt air. Not everyone has that feeling. That's the feeling for me. Other people, it might be in a forest. It might be by a lake, maybe in the mountains. So here's what I would like to leave you with after today's episode. 1, I'd like you to start tracking how you feel in different places, not just when you're on vacation, but if you're at a cafe and you're in a different neighborhood, maybe you're going for a walk somewhere different than you normally are. Or when you travel on vacation, how do you feel when you're there? Does it feel like it could be home? Or does it feel like a place you're traveling through? Number two, ask yourself, where does my body breathe deeper? Where do you feel like your shoulders fall back down again because you're so relaxed? Where do you see yourself smiling more? You feel more joy. You don't feel the tension and stress. Where does time slow down for you? These are the questions I want you to ask yourself. That's how you know when it's time to make a change, when it's time to transform where you live or how you live. Number three, begin to challenge the assumption that the life that you want has to be built where you are located right now. It doesn't have to be. It could be anywhere. But maybe you haven't allowed yourself to think about that, to allow yourself the possibility to think, could it be possible to move and live somewhere that's like heaven on earth? Number four, most of all, give yourself permission to want a life that feels good, that heals your nervous system, that brings you a happiness that you can't even explain to people. It's like your whole body is smiling and joyful. If this episode today has stirred a little something inside you, has planted a little seed in your heart, in your mind, I have created a business that is helping people to figure out, decide now during your midlife, what do I do next? That is my special power. That is what I help people get the clarity on. And then when you decide, I will be specializing on Mediterranean Sunbelt living because I'm going to back what I say. I believe you can do whatever you decide you want to do, but you have to make the decision and then you just have to figure out the plan. And that's what I'm here for. I have always been a proponent of reinventing yourself. If you go back in this podcast for years, you're going to see I talked about the transformation of a mindset, the transformation of your body through diet and fitness, the reinvention of a career. Don't be afraid. Fear is just made up in your mind about the worst case scenarios of what could happen in life. I am here to tell you I was worst case scenario and I'm still here, but I'm no longer worst case scenario. I'm the best case scenario. So if you are looking for guidance, transformation, a reinvention, and you don't know where to start, this is where you reach out to me. You don't have to keep living a life that feels like it's a bad fit for you. You're allowed to change your mind. We're allowed to go through different chapters in life. Just like in a book that we read, we also have chapters of life. And sometimes we're in the build chapter, sometimes we're in the maintenance chapter, and sometimes we're in the it's time for something new chapter. I hope you have enjoyed this different episode and reach out to me. Download, share with a friend. Do you know someone who is struggling with this right now? Share it with them. You never know how much it may help them to know that they're not alone in this feeling like, I think I need a change. I'll see you next week. Bye for now.